Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. For the past 16 years, there's been one constant in Albany, Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver. Over that time, he's helped Democrats pad their majority to the current point where their conference holds 108 of the Assembly's 150 seats, a supermajority allowing Silver to override any veto. That is, until last night, when Republicans made significant gains in the Assembly, picking up at least 7 seats, with several still too close to call. Joining us now to talk more about the success is his conference had last night is Assembly Republican leader Brian Kolb. Thanks so much for joining us, leader.
Always a pleasure. Great to be here.
Now, you must be very excited today. This is what you've really been revving up for the past few months.
Well, it is very exciting because a lot of hard work went into races across the state. We had a terrific campaign team, great volunteers, terrific support, and really to win seats in every region of the state, incumbents and also Democrat-controlled seats was really a huge victory for our conference. The fact we had 20% of our conference retire this year, so we had 9 open seats and we won every single one of them. And so that, I think, by itself is unheard of. And plus the fact that we were outspent, and we always are outspent, 4 or 5 to 1 across the state. So we're really thrilled with the outcome.
I remember having a conversation with you 6 months ago, probably, and you were talking about the strategy then of how you were going to win back enough seats to get rid of this veto-proof majority. Do you think you've done it?
Well, I think we're going to be darn close because, you know, in any of these districts, especially, we got 4 or 5 seats that are going to go to absentee ballots. You got to go through the recanvassing process. You know, I got here on an absentee ballot victory 10 years ago. I won by a whopping 10 votes.
Oh, my gosh.
I know what this process is like, but certainly I think we're going to be anywhere from, I think, 49 to 51 seats. But I think the significance of being that close, especially in this environment, I think there's going to be some Assembly Democrats from across the state that be a little reluctant just to vote in lockstep with the leadership and with the New York City-dominated Assembly majority.
Now, in the Senate, it's still too close to call as well. In the Assembly, too close to call. What do you think this means for Republicans across the state?
Well, certainly I think that the Senate Republicans are still poised to take back the majority. Obviously, lots of ballots have to be counted, and it's a process that by the time everyone's done talking about it, we'll say, boy, we're glad that's over. But certainly I think the most important issue here are the issues. And I think over the last 2 years especially, the Senate Republicans and the Assembly Republicans were talking about restoring fiscal sanity, really reforming state government, reducing state spending, fixing our property tax issue problem, private sector job creation. And I think those messages really resonated across the state, especially when you look at the fact that the Democrats took the statewide offices, but in the legislative branch, I think the Republican message of lower taxes, less spending, reforming state government really resonated.
As a hypothetical here, if the Senate Republicans do win back the majority, what's the first issue that the Assembly Republicans are going to want to try and partner on them now that they have a little bit more power, a little bit more sway?
Well, I think what we're going to partner with the Senate Republicans is really the same thing we were trying to partner with the Senate Republicans last year in terms of trying to get the Assembly Democrats, the Senate Democrats, and quite frankly, Governor Patterson, we have to reduce spending. We have a multi-billion-dollar deficit. We do not have a statewide economic development program. We do not have a statewide energy program. We really focused on the public policy issues together because this is what we believe is most important, that the taxpayers and the businesses of New York are really looking for, and I think that's going to be our continued focus going into January.
Well, you bring up the budget, and you had said earlier that you think this might make some Democrats a little more hesitant to just vote in lockstep with their conference. Do you think the budget is going to be one of those issues where some Democrats in the Assembly might take a step back and maybe side with you guys?
Well, it's not even about siding with us. It's about siding with the taxpayers. And I think that's where the Assembly Democrats, and especially in our House, have lost sight. I think the New York City representatives have no clue about the impact of the fiscal policies in upstate, property taxes, lack of private sector jobs. And I think this is what's starting to resonate even in Democrat districts across the state. And I think certainly we've got really poised to work with the new governor, Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy. And if they're going to follow through on their agenda of of fixing state government, we're going to be partners with the Senate Republicans, with the Democrats. We'll work with anybody as long as we're finally going to fix this state.
You bring up Governor-elect Andrew Cuomo. He's not the only Democrat that won statewide, though. The Democrats swept the statewide ticket. What were your impressions of that?
Well, certainly in this state, especially statewide, this is where New York City really comes into focus in terms of a voting bloc. When you look at legislative districts, you're really carving out smaller pieces of voters throughout the state, even though many of our districts are still Democrat-dominated in terms of registration. I think really it's just always tough to win statewide in New York. I thought we had very good candidates, but you know, certainly I think you had very formidable and quality candidates on the Democrat side, and eventually the voters get to choose who they think they want to represent them in Albany.
Well, you're a Western New York guy. What do you think the Palladino effect was, as it were, on election night?
Well, you know what? From our perspective, we don't see the impact because we won seats all across the state, from New York City. We picked up our next New York City seat in Staten Island, all the way to Buffalo, Southern Tier, Central New York, the North Country, the Hudson Valley, Long Island. So we were successful everywhere on our message, our Republican message of fiscal sanity and private sector job creation. So I'm really enthused that I think we did the great job at the root grassroots level across the state, and I don't think that had a bearing when it came to the gubernatorial race.
What do you think the next few weeks are going to look like? Nail biters for you as you're waiting for these last ballots to come in?
Well, certainly we're going to be anxious moments, but it's a process. We've been through it. I've been through it. It took me 90 days to get seated. When I first got elected, we went through every court in the New York State judicial system to get seated. So I'm sort of veteran of those fights and those battles. But I think in the end, all the ballots will get counted that should be counted. We'll finally elect the candidates, and then we can move forward legislatively with obviously the eventual choices of the voters.
Great. Leader Kolb, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Always.
And it's going to be interesting seeing what happens coming up.
Sure thing. We'll look forward to talking further.